class, we're now on day 3 of the kingdoms in this world. Today we're going to focus only on plants and the different categories that all our plants fall into. And in class you're going to actually do a scavenger hunt and look around school for each one of these types of plants. So pay good attention so that you'll be ready to find those plants tomorrow. We are at chapter 22, section 1 today. First, what is a plant? Many of you already know a lot of these characteristics of plants, but all the plants we actually put in the kingdom Plantae. They're all eukaryotes, have cell walls that contain cellulose, and carry out photosynthesis with chlorophyll. But plants need certain things to survive. What are those things? Basically, they need sunlight, gas, and water and minerals. First of all, they need sunlight in order to carry out photosynthesis. That's the main ingredient in photosynthesis, is sunlight. And their leaves are typically broad, very wide and flat, and arranged so that on the stem that all of the leaves will get a maximum amount of sunlight. Plants also need gases like oxygen, and they need to exchange it for carbon dioxide. They require oxygen to support their cellular respiration, and they need carbon dioxide to carry out photosynthesis. They can exchange these gases through their leaves, and many of them do it trying not to lose water in the process. Lastly, they need water and minerals. The land plants have structures that help them to limit the amount of water that they lose because they need it all for their photosynthesis. And then also, plants that are in the water have special mechanisms to keep them from being overloaded with water. And they also need minerals that help them to continue to grow strong. Next, we're going to talk about the different groups of plants. In chapter 22, section 2, we're going to talk about plants that don't have seeds. How do they get things done without seeds? First of all, green algae. If you've ever seen that green kind of slimy stuff on rocks around lakes, ponds, rivers, even in our school aquarium, that green stuff, green algae. They are not just all algae are, all algae are not a single group, but this type of algae is actually photosynthetic. It does contain or do photosynthesis. That's why it's classified into plants. They are many cells, these green algae. They form colonies, which are many cells long. An example would be Spirogyra. It has long thread-like colonies, so it looks like long stalks of green organisms. Volvox is another one. It's actually circular and actually spins. And again, it's another type of photosynthetic plant, but it's very small. It's a green algae. In the next group, we've also probably seen mosses and another group called bryophytes. Mosses, again, they also grow on rocks, but they grow a little bit taller. They're not always as squishy and slimy as the algae are. But mosses have a waxy protective coating that allows them to resist drying, because mosses and bryophytes do not have roots. How would they have roots if they are stuck to a rock? So they actually absorb all of their nutrients right through their tissue. Some examples are mosses, hornworts, liverworts. They're all known as bryophytes, which do not contain any vascular, roots or way of absorbing water through their roots. They do not make lignin, which is just a hard material for their cell walls, and they do not contain vascular tissue, which would allow water to go through a stem, because they don't have stems. Many of these bryophytes are very small because they don't have enough, they cannot grow tall because of the water. They cannot take water up their body, so that's why they're very small, close to the ground. They can just absorb all that water directly. Those are the bryophytes and the mosses. They do not have any vascular systems. Like you have veins and arteries that take your blood through your body, they don't have this. This next group actually do have these vascular tissues. They can take water up from their roots to their stems and back out to their leaves. These are called vascular systems, and we call these tracheophytes because they have special cells called tracheids that allow them to take water up through these cells. We call these cells xylem that take up water. Xylem take up the water from the roots. They're needing nutrients. So how do they get nutrients up to their cells or to their leaves? They go through phloem. Phloem transports solutions of nutrients and carbohydrates that the plant can produce. Now again, I said all of these plants that we're talking about right now do not have seeds. So some of the ones that don't have seeds are called the ferns, horsetails, or club mosses. The most common one are the ferns. If you've ever seen a fern, they don't have big seeds or hard seeds that help them reproduce. They actually have spores that allow them to reproduce. They do have vascular tissues, they do have those roots and stems, and they thrive in areas with little light and very wet situations, mostly by rivers, ponds, places like that. They are called seedless vascular plants because they have a vascular system, but they don't reproduce with seeds. They usually use spores. Our last section is going to be the plants that actually use seeds. There are two categories of plants that use seeds. First of all, why is a seed important? If other plants can get by without seeds, why can't these? Well, these are very special. God made them so that they needed seeds in order to reproduce. A seed is a plant embryo, just like a little baby, and it's a food supply that's encased in a protective coating. The living plant within the seed is in the early developmental stages of the plant life cycle. The first type of plant that uses seeds are called gymnosperms. Why are they called gymnosperms? It's because they bear their seeds in cones. If you've ever seen a pine tree that has pine cones, those are gymnosperms. They have all of their seeds inside the pine cone. That is different from the next type of seeded plant called an angiosperm. These angiosperms are all the plants that produce their seeds in flowers and fruit. So we have the gymnosperms that have their seeds in pine cones, and we have the angiosperms which produce their seeds in flowers. How is pollen involved in this? We've had flowers, so we know we need pollen. In the seed plants, the entire male gamete is in the pollen grain, and they are carried usually in the wind or even through other animals to the female part of the plant. And when we transfer this pollen from the male to the female part of the plant, we call this pollination. After fertilization, this pollination has happened, that little embryo starts to grow, and a tough seed coat starts to form around that embryo. And that seed coat protects it and keeps it from drying out. And the embryo begins to grow when the conditions are right, and it uses the nutrients inside that seed to continue to grow until it can reproduce and do photosynthesis on its own. So again, that seed is the little embryo of the plant that's trying to grow so that it can make a new plant in the future. So as a review, we have plants that need sunlight, water, gas exchange. We have plants that don't have roots. They're very small, called mosses and bryophytes. They don't have any vascular tissue, no roots, no stems to let water go up. We have plants that don't have seeds, but have roots and stems to let water go through, like our fern. And then we have the two types of plants that use seeds. We have the pine trees that use cones, and we have the flowering plants that use flowers in order to reproduce with seeds. So hopefully during your scavenger hunt, you'll be able to find something from each one of these categories and be able to tell me what type of plant is it. So I hope you enjoy that and have a great afternoon.